Hello, welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by your pals at Music Ally. If you want a guide to what's going on in the music industry and how it all works, then, well, here we are. We'll be looking at the finances of the music industry, whilst also bringing you stories and comment from the pop business in the past week. He's Stuart Dredge, I'm Joe Sparrow, and Stu, let's start with a particularly big number this week.
Okay, my big number this week is 55 billion euros, which is the amount that Universal Music Group is not being bought for by a hedge fund.
Right. Now, okay.
I could have picked many other numbers. It's not being bought for by a hedge fund, but this is a specific number because an offer had been made of that amount.
Yes. Explain this, because we know that Universal Music Group is the biggest label in the world. It seems to be doing all right, pulling in tons and tons and tons of cash, biggest artists in the world, etc., etc. So what was this deal about then? Why do they want to buy them?
Well, it came from this hedge fund called Pershing Square, which is already an investor in Universal. And so it was 55 million euros, which is about $64 billion at current exchange rates, or 47.5 billion pounds at the King's. And I think part of the offer was like saying, we think that Universal is not doing a good enough job with its share price. It's not being valued by the markets, which is true. Because this offer was 55 billion euros, and Universal Music Group's market cap, so the value of shares, is currently 35.4 billion. So not only was this bidding a lot more, but it was saying, you're not doing a good enough job of this should be a more valuable business. So it's partly that, and saying we think we can run it different ways. We think we do this, that. It was one of those offers where some of the money was going to be cash, some of the money was going to be made by selling Universal Music Group's Spotify stake, and some of it was going to be debt. So debt sort of, thing, which is a kind of a famous when hedge funds take over things. And sometimes there is a sort of a massive wad of debt loaded onto the company, be it Man United or something else. One of the other big shareholders in Universal is Bolloré Group, which is French media investment thing. And they said, we don't agree with this deal. We don't think it's a good idea. This guy, Bill Ackman, who runs Pershing Square, they were like, we don't think he's the right person to be in charge of UMG. So quite personal. Yeah. And he'd already said, without this company, Bolloré Group, agreeing, this deal is dead. So that happened. And then Universal went, all right, then we're rejecting it.
But it had got quite personal at the start, right? He'd sort of said, hey, the people who are running it at the moment, which is basically pointing a big finger at Lucian Grange, who leads the company, aren't doing a good enough job. He sort of was very specific about that one.
Kind of, although it was of course saying, we big respect for them, and we had dinner, and they were quite keen on the idea in a sense. So there was a bit of olive branch waving going on. But Universal, basically the deal is not in the best interest of UMG, its shareholders, artists, songwriters, employees, and other stakeholders, which is a nicely pointed long list, I think. And said it fundamentally and materially undervalues UMG and will not deliver superior value creation, which I think the interesting thing here is like UMG, we know UMG's value at the moment, it's 35.4 billion euros. That's what the markets value it at, its share price. But UMG clearly thinks it's worth a lot more than that, and it can do that itself. It can drive its price higher. So the question now is like, what's it going to do then? Staying independent. Well, staying independent sounds a crazy thing to say, doesn't it? Universal Music Group, but staying as a plucky independent upstart. Yeah, the focus will now shift on to how is it going to make sure that it's not Wall Street, it's Amsterdam Strasse, isn't it?
That's right.
How is it going to get investors to agree that it's worth a lot more than that?
So basically, this hedge fund said, hey, by the way, we want to buy you for $20 billion above your market capitalization because we don't think you're valued high enough. And then Universal Music Group basically did a sort of switcheroo and said, well, we're going to reject your offer because we don't think you value us high enough.
Yeah, and they're kind of agreeing, I suppose. They're both agreeing it's worth a lot more than even the offer. but Universal is saying we could do that ourselves. We don't think so. Yeah. So for now, Universal will stay. There hasn't been any follow up from Pershing Square saying what it's going to do now. But having said in the past, this deal won't work if we don't have this particular shareholder on board, and they said no. It looks like it's dead in the water. But I'm always open to the minute after we stop recording some massive development happening. So we can discuss that next week if we need to.
Stu, 3 big stories this week, and I'm absolutely thrilled to note that the number one on our list is featuring Boards of Canada. So this week, enigmatic duo Boards of Canada have somehow ended up beefing with the White House. I was going to say that wasn't on my bingo card for this year, but like that's just normal life now.
The whole
Hold
idea
on.
of bingo cards has kind of gone out the window,
Yes.
hasn't it? But so this is because you are the person who, whenever Boards of Canada had a new release out, you would message the whole team pointing out that there's a new release and we should listen to it.
Mhm.
So I thought, but yeah, I mean, it's weird though. This is a weird story because, like, we've seen the last year, the White House and the US administration generally, they put these social media posts out, and they usually use whatever the biggest pop song is by the biggest pop act who has liberal views. So Olivia Rodrigo, Sabrina Carpenter. They did it to Scissor as well. And they'll do this, and it's kind of quite clearly a strategy. Like, okay, we're going to use someone's music in our post promoting detention centers or immigration throwouts, and so things that artists don't like. And then the artist protests, and it gets more, gets more publicity and views and notoriety. So it's kind of a trolling strategy, isn't it?
It's
And
the
this
cat
week,
thing, isn't it? Of just sort of slapping something on the table to distract from, I don't know, another Epstein headline or something like that.
well, quite. So this week, I mean, it's weird because I can't imagine what you'd think if you were like a big fan of the president and you saw an Instagram reel from the White House that's kind of glitchy visuals and you can't quite work out what's there, and it's got this strange music in the background because it looked like a Ports of Canada promo. I think in my understanding of them, it was quite close to what their visual aesthetic is like.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, there's lots of strange things about this because, like you say, all those artists you listed before that they've used music and got the criticism and blah, 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 are quite big artists. Boards of Canada are, as you said, an enigmatic duo who reemerge like cicadas every 13 years and do something and then go away again. And they have this very weird visual aesthetic. And the White House copied that. And the first weird thing is that how big is that Boards of Canada audience? I guess they must have done some data crunching and observed that the overlap between Boards of Canada fans and the libs that they really want to aggravate is pretty much a perfect circle.
Maybe so. And it's weird because like they got the reaction they wanted. So Warp Records quickly said neither label nor band condone the unauthorized use of their music for political messaging. But it's strange. But I think the other thing is we talk about dead cats. It has distracted a bit, but not much from this bin fire that's the Freedom 250 concert.
Oh yeah. So what's going on with this then?
Well, so this has been happening in parallel to this, and maybe they popped out Boards of Canada thinking we need something that no one will expect. But this is a concert. So it was originally announced like a bipartisan thing, not a political thing. It was celebrating 250 years of American independence. And they announced this series of concerts, and they announced, and the phrase in the press release was star-studded.
List some of those stars, yes, please.
Well, Martina McBride, who is a star and very good, a country singer, and I Love the 90s night with CNC Music Factory, Vanilla Ice, Milli Vanilli, and Young MC, which
wow. I will defend Young MC to the death, but everything else I would happily leave behind.
But I mean, and obviously some strangers say that CNC Music Factory has neither C nor C in it anymore, the founders. Milli Vanilli has one of the people who were in Milli Vanilli when they weren't singing their songs.
Yeah.
And then they had the Commodores and Flo Rida and Bret Michaels out of Poison as the bill. And in the days following the announcement, pretty much most of them pulled out and said, we thought this was a bipartisan neutral thing. We didn't think it was going to be so political because it was found to be very, very strongly linked to the current president. So as far as I know, at the moment, Vanilla Ice is still playing. And he gave an interview, maybe didn't help the cause, saying, I'll go play for Putin and I'll play in Iran if you want. I don't care.
Yeah.
The guy in Milli Vanilli is still there, but the people who actually sang the Milli Vanilli songs have come out and said, we don't support this. It's not us. And then what happened was the president posted saying, cancel it. They were boring anyway. And now he is the headliner for the opening ceremony, which has become a political rally. Although I don't know if they've given Boards of Canada a call. Maybe there's
I was going to say, they haven't played live for about 25 years, Boards of Canada. One thing I will say about Boards of Canada is that, they again, about this video, is that the White House are putting out this kind of propaganda stuff, which doesn't really have an end other than, it's not like they need to remind us that they're doing all these things that are controversial. They're doing it really just to aggravate people, right? It is the attention economy of just
it just feel like trolling, doing it for the
It's
trolling effect.
trolling, yeah, like, the highest level, and it's essentially the attention economy, isn't it? Of saying, right, we're going to hijack your attention with this, and then we're going to move on to something else, and move on to something else, and in some ways, it doesn't really matter to them who it is, because even if you don't know who Boards of Canada is, you're sort of dragged into the news story anyway,
Mm.
and it's about, you know, the fact that they've pulled in this artist you don't know and they're complaining about it. It doesn't. I mean, this has happened a lot now. It's hard to sort of know how to respond to this, isn't it? Like, they're going to just keep doing it, and the only real way of dealing with it and pushing back is ignoring it. Maybe you can see, listeners will spot that we are studiously avoiding saying the name of the president.
It's what he wants. But it's a fascinating state of affairs watching this US administration's interactions with music. Because obviously there are some very prominent right-wing musicians in the US, Kid Rock, for example,
I mean, that's pushing the word prominent, isn't it? I mean, he's more famous now because he's supporting Trump. Surely, I mean,
well, maybe so, but there are. But it is fascinating to see. I mean, the same week, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine announced his own, what's it called, Power to the People Festival in October, which is going to be a celebration of peace, justice, solidarity, music, and community action. So very much positioned as a celebration of those good things, not an anti-president or an anti, thing. But it's by definition, it's in. And they've got Bruce Springsteen, Foo Fighters, Joan Baez. If we're talking about I Love the 90s, they've got Cypress Hill.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
And you sort of look at those two events and go, wow, could you really not get any better acts for concerts celebrating the 250th anniversary of America?
But they're not getting Bruce Springsteen, are they? They're not getting superstars aligning with them. And it's a really weird state of affairs where we've seen the left wing trying to use the power of these artists to win people over, and it doesn't work. And then the right wing, all they have to do is just annoy them, and it seems to solidify their position, which is odd, isn't it? Last FM next. This is
I Love the 90s, or not quite the 90s.
Close enough. I mean, this is one of the very, very early big music tech startups. And 20 odd years ago, or 19 years ago, it was once so buzzy that a big US media corporation bought it for nearly $300 million. Nearly 20 years later, it's going independent again. First of all, why? And secondly, is that big news now?
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? Because it was Last FM was one of together with Pandora, I suppose, at the time, it was the height of music tech's coolness.
Mm.
And it was, wow, this is long before Spotify, long before. And CBS Interactive bought it for $280 million, which felt like one of those, with no disrespect to Last FM, which was really good. It felt like a big US corporation with more money than sense going, we're going to buy this thing. We don't quite know why or what we're going to do with it. It might fit with our radio business, possibly. Who knows?
A bit like when Rupert Murdoch bought MySpace, and it didn't really work out.
But which is I want to be not disrespectful, because like Last FM, it was really good. So if for people who are like, what is Last FM, which might be quite a few people, it was personalized radio, wasn't it? It was like radio streaming service that would play music for you based on your tastes. It would learn more about you as you went. And again, and a lot of it was the back end of it was the tracking what you listened to and liked. And it's been going ever since then, and like gradually sort of slipped from view in terms of being mainstream. And as things like Spotify emerged, those become dominant services. But it's been going. It's been squabbling everything I listen to quietly for the last 20 years. And when I log in now, it's like, wow, these are interesting recommendations that I want to check out. So it's good. But yeah, so basically it's spent that last 20 years, in a way, it feels like the kind of forgotten stepchild, like playing with its toys in a bedroom somewhere, while CBS or whatever CBS was at the time. I mean, now it's Paramount Skydance Corporation via 17 different mergers. Yeah. Without ever feeling core to the company's business. But on the plus side, they never shut it down. It just carried on doing its thing. And like when I was writing this story up, I looked at its financial results because it still files them. And it was like it made 2.2 million quid in 2024. It did make quite a big loss of nearly 700,000 quid. But it's still, people are paying to use Last FM, to kind of squabble their stuff and to make recommendations. So this announcement was like, we're going to be a new chapter as an independent company that will focus fully on building listening insights, community features for music fans. So what they're trying to do is kind of build that stuff around streaming, the community stuff, the recommendations, which, I mean, as someone who dives in now and again, back to my account, it is really good. But what it's fighting against is, I think, all the big streaming services nowadays, they give you some idea of, here are some insights. Like Spotify has got its rap thing, and then recently it's done its 20-year thing. Like Spotify is telling you more about what you listen to in engaging ways. It might not be as deep as Last FM, but it might feel deep enough for most people to seek out anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it has in the last decade, let's say, had a bit of a, the focus is perhaps from people who really love data and really love music, and that sort of is perhaps explains partially their position at the moment. But if you look at it from an independent business perspective now, they've got 20 years of millions and millions and millions of people's listening data. You think if you train an AI on that, there's got to be something of value in there, right? It tells you something about how and why people listen to music. And you could go through all that data, and surely there's a big business, there's a good business to be made here out of 20 years of data, surely.
I wonder if there's an acquisition to be made here also. Like you think about something like Who Sampled, which gathered all the details on samples and their backgrounds. Yeah. And then Spotify bought it and used it as a basis for its new feature, explaining. So there's something still valuable in Last FM.
This next story introduced me to the concept of paying over $5 for a biscuit. Warner Music Group is on the verge of settling its lawsuit with the US cookies chain Crumble, and that's Crumble without an E, to make it sound like, I guess, like a late 90s startup again. And Crumble, for clarification, sell cookies that cost around about $5. But why are brands and retailers getting sued by major labels for their social posts at the moment?
Yeah, well, this is an ongoing story. So the background is, as individuals, like me and you and anyone listening, we can make an Instagram post, tap the music button, pick a track from the library, and that's covered by Instagram's licensing deals with labels and publishers. And the same for TikTok and Snapchat. It's why we can make a post of our cats and soundtrack it with AC/DC or whatever else we want. But you can't do that if you're a brand or a business. So if I was Stuart,
why is that? Explain for our listeners why you can't do that.
Well, because if you want to use commercial music in your social posts, you need a proper sync license.
Because you're a business, and by using the music, you're adding value to your business.
Yeah, and these licensing deals cover individuals' personal posts. They do not cover brands and businesses. And that's why, like last 2 years, we've seen a succession of brands, so like fitness brands and fashion brands, and now cookie retailers, being sued by major labels. Said, look, we have counted 170 plus of your social posts using music by our artists, and you didn't have a license.
For clarity, is this the kind of thing where you have like a brand like this, and then they will get a micro influencer or someone to essentially make a social post saying how great their $5 cookies are, and then they put music in the background, and then that blows up, and it's sort of like a layer of removal where there's this was an individual doing it. It wasn't us doing it. Honest, we paid for them to do it, but
this is two layers. So one, it's the brand's own posts on their own accounts, and then there is this other layer of influencers who are being paid by them. In some of the cases we've seen, the brands have argued, well, we don't have any control over the music they use, and they can choose whatever music they want, and they're allowed to have music in there. Yeah. And in some of the cases, I think there was some sympathy towards this argument and said, actually, no, where you've got them is on their own social posts, if they're using music in their own accounts. But anyway, in this case, Crumble was sued by Warner Music, and they now filed saying they're verge of settling, which seems to be the way these things turn out. There haven't really been big court cases as such. It's tended to be the announcement of the lawsuit, and then at some point it gets settled quietly.
Well, if you're charging $5 for a biscuit, I'm sure you've got a bit of cash in the bank to pay off Warner Music, right?
Do you know, you're going to get in trouble for that, I think. Isn't from Americans, there's a cookie is different from a biscuit?
I'm sorry to our American listeners. I mean cookie, yes. Biscuit is a sort of savory scone, isn't it?
I called Oreos biscuits the other day, and one of our American colleagues, who I love and respect, pointed out to me that it's not a biscuit, it's a cookie. And I need to now go and look at what the difference is.
Tomato. Stu, any other business? Another day, another 17 baffling trends on TikTok made up by young people to confuse us oldie wonks. But okay, text messaging to song trend. I mean, go on, tell us about that.
I love how the intro is exasperated and weary. Text to song is when people take particularly entertaining or spicy messaging threads and then turn them into song lyrics and songs using Suno.
Yeah.
So this is a trend. One example was a woman who had a terrible date where the guy messaged her, basically demanding she refund him for dinner and Uber because she wouldn't sleep with him. The things that used to go viral on Twitter as screenshots.
Yeah.
There's another one. The best one is someone who's got a panicked messaging thread with a friend who's stuck in a man's bedroom, and his living girlfriend has just come home unexpectedly, and they're texting their friend basically saying help, and they turn it into a gospel track, which really has to be seen. So these things all relate into this idea of right, I'm going to take a funny messaging thread. It's like parents doing things with their kids, comedy messaging threads, or people turning their bosses' Slack orders into songs. So basically anything that's funny, I can make a song of it. And this sounds flippant, but as this took off, Suno's app downloads in the US quadrupled week on week, with no other obvious spur for that other than this TikTok trend. And you also saw very quickly, Suno added this feature where you can now turn a screenshot of text, your messages, into lyrics. So it's seen this and gone, right, this is the thing we need to lean into.
So, I mean, look, I would rather eat my own eyeballs than engage with TikTok for more than 5 minutes. But when I did look at, these are funny, right? Some of these are actually funny. And when you take this kind of panicked message thread, someone texting from under the bed, and turn it into a gospel track, it does give you a laugh, right? It sort of struck me that this is what platforms like this are for. These AI generative music platforms are for making like one-shot, one-off songs that get a bit of a laugh or it's a bespoke birthday song or something, and then you never listen to it again, or it lives in a very, very short space. And it works, it's quick, it's easy, people are enjoying doing it, and then we'll possibly move on to something else in the future. But that's a very different way of thinking about music that's produced at quite a high value. So if we assume that these platforms are making music that sounds, in terms of production, at a reasonable, recognizable, this is good enough level, in the past these songs would have cost hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars to make. They could take 2 minutes now and they can be a trend for a couple of days and then disappear again. This feels like what this AI generative music stuff is for. Which, I mean, we discussed that ad nauseum, but what I wanted to talk about to you was this is just a very different way of thinking about music, isn't it? Music is now this throwaway commodity, and it's never really been like that.
No, and then maybe that's not a terrible thing, because maybe this separates it. Maybe the music made by professional human artists is still art, is still wonderful. And then music made by everyone can be throwaway, disposable, memes, ways of connecting, ways of making people laugh. And maybe those two things can live side by side, with the obvious caveat that the thing being used to make it should be licensed. Because what lets me make a funny gospel song about my friend under the bed has been trained on the entirety of gospel music, and they're not getting paid at the moment. So there's that you can't overlook that thing hovering in the background. But yeah, if and when everything gets licensed, this might be where AI music has a place that isn't swamping Spotify with slop.
Yeah.
It's something people communicate, and this stuff is funny and it's really entertaining. And like you say, it doesn't have to live for weeks, and it doesn't have to. No. And the other thing is that this is more complicated. Maybe there is money there. Like if a TikTok video is watched, 500 million times, there's money around that in ads on TikTok and things. And so the question there is, how does that money make its way to the different people involved in this process?
There's a lot there, isn't there? Because for a start, yes, those models have been trained on all of gospel music ever, and those people are not getting paid for it at the moment. But then they would never have been paid for it, because nobody would have paid a gospel choir to create one of those songs in the first.
That would be going quite far, wouldn't it?
Yeah. That's the point, isn't it? You couldn't have afforded to do it before, so now you can do it. You're not paying them, but that money wouldn't have existed anyway. But at the same time, you're right. There's a lot of money being generated here around music, but it's not, that money doesn't seem to be reaching the gospel choirs who've been recorded for, nearly 100 years. And are these models going to start revealing what they've trained on so that money can work its way back to them? We don't seem to have an answer to that yet. And then the third part is that idea about, this increasingly, it seems unusual that streaming platforms are just allowing so much AI-generated music onto their platforms, because why do people want this stuff? Like you say, if this is what it's good for, which is living in the moment and dying in the moment, having the lifespan of a butterfly, that's fine. but it doesn't need to be archived forever. This is different to the music we're used to, right? Which does need to be archived forever.
Yeah. And it does, I think it just points as well to this weird contradiction a lot of us feel, which I think there's a pressure, I think, in the music industry, especially to be quite hard line on AI music and say it's not as good as human music. It's not properly trained, to be quite, and I don't enjoy listening to it at all. And actually that gospel track made me laugh so much, and I wanted to share it with everyone I knew. And I thought it was really funny. I think it's quite hard to say that because we feel like, and then we have to go caveat, oh dear, but the training. So this is why I think if the licensing can be sorted out so that these models are all properly licensed and money is flowing back from the people who use them to do stuff, then we can actually enjoy the good things and go, yeah, actually, this is what it's for. This is what it could be, without that kind of weight dangling us saying this is bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Again, it comes back to that idea of how we define music, because I think we can safely say it is not good music. Like I'm not going to go home and like fire up a playlist of these songs to listen to at home. But if I see something in the moment and it makes me laugh, then that also has value. Does that make it good music? I would say that the problem here is that we don't have we need to change the definition of what music is. And it's always been recorded music that is operating in a certain way. And now we have this other form of recorded music, which is very throwaway, has very low value in terms of creation, execution, but can create a lot of value in terms of how it's shared around the world. And that's just a completely different business and way of thinking about music. And talking of charts and rankings, there's a new site called Stream League, which wants to turn music releases into a fantasy sports style game. This is again shifting music to something else. What is it, Stu?
Well, this is from a guy called Kieran Donahue, who's like a sort of startup founder who's trying to share my playlist back in the day. He's kind of he's always the man who's got a new idea up. And it's a weekly fantasy draft, which I believe is a sports thing, probably more American, where it's not like having a fantasy team as such, but you're drafting, well, it's in that area. In this case, every Friday, this site publishes the latest New Music Friday playlist on Spotify. So I think it's 100 odd tracks. And then what you have to do as a player is choose 10 of them to draft your picks, 10 of these tracks. And what you're looking for is the ones you think are going to get the most streams in that next week. And then over the week, there's this league table of all the players based on total streams for their draft of 10 songs. And it's interesting because it sounds like kind of a novelty, fun thing. But Kieran reckons it could become quite an interesting barometer of what the people in the business think is going to be a hit, but also pointing out when they're wrong and pointing out this was the third top track this week and yet no one picked it. And he's already drawing out those insights.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like a fantasy league game for A&R people, but at the same time, a sort of way to check how good A&R people are at predicting what's going to be successful.
Well, that's it. And it's a very specific metric, isn't it? It's not what do you like, and it's not what do you think is brilliant. It's about what do you think is going to get the most streams, which in a way feels slightly, I was going down a list of tracks when I was picking mine last week and going, oh, I love that song, but I'm not picking that obviously because it won't get more than 1 million streams. And that felt quite sad to me that I was
going to say, doesn't this just take the joy out of music in some respects?
Yeah, but then it's, at the same time, it's quite fun going down and going, right, I think that thing. And you end up doing your research and going, well, what was the streams for their last single? And I got quite nerdily into it, like I do whenever I get pulled into any kind of fantasy game. I'm 11th this week in the chart. I'm not even in the top 10. So that's why I'm not an A&R.
11's not bad. I think that sounds pretty...
Well, who's in so you get a little line of who you are, which I rather stillly put my actual job title, but who's in the top 10? The head of music streaming at TikTok is in the top 10. Someone Because Music, someone from Unheard Music. And the top person is an owner and composer. So an actual musician is top. Like in football, you end up feeling quite sort of feelings towards artists who are either letting you down or pulling you up. So Ariana Grande is doing very well for me this week. But YG, is it YG? I don't know, these young artists. Gang Business is not doing business for me. It's just let my whole side down. But so it's good. But it's fun. But I think it's one of those things that I think we all like to think we could pick a hit. And this could be quite a brutal reckoning for anyone who's not quite got the chops to match their their
Okay,
conference. fantasy
ANR. I think that does sound fun. Finally, Stu, for listeners who use Google's Waze navigation app when they're driving, they have an option now to be navigated by a familiar voice. Who is that?
Yes, this is Ziggy Marley,
Right.
son of. So yeah, this happens every so often. Like these car navigation apps go, oh, we've got a famous person to do the voice. Like Snoop Dogg did it once, I think. But yeah, Ziggy Marley is bringing his quotes. I'm going to do some quotes here.
Yeah, please.
Signature calming energy to Waze, which is Google's navigation app. And I've got a really good quote here. Ziggy's guidance will include musings like, I don't see the road as distance. I see it as transformation. By the time we arrive, we're not the same as when we began. Which, when you're trying to navigate Spaghetti Junction, is maybe not going to be as much of a comfort as they're hoping it will be.
I remember a few years ago when sat-navs became all the rage, you could download sort of celebrity sound-alike packs, and one of them was Basil Fawlty from Fawlty Towers. And it's the opposite of this. It's the most stressful driving experience, having Basil Fawlty shout at you to your left and take the third exit at the roundabout.
This is just something that is valuable for artists, your voice. And there are ways now to very easily clone your voice using AI with your full permission and then use it for things like this. And I don't know if there's money involved here or if it's promotional because he has got a new album out. But this is something artists can think about. Right. Well, if I had my official AI voice clone, who might want to license that? You know, I could be the voice of smart speakers, I could be the voice of navigation apps. It's kind of an opportunity. So this is a little serious point. It's just something that artists could make money from without lots of effort.
So to bring things back to the start, hypothetically, if I was a huge MAGA fan in the US and Vanilla Ice licensed his voice to one of these apps, I could have, driving around my giant pickup truck with inappropriate stickers and flags on the back, I could have Vanilla Ice rapping the directions to me as I drove down a highway to the latest MAGA rally.
To the extreme, turn right like a vandal. Yes. But yeah, good. But I agree. I think Ziggy Marley is perfect for this. He's got mellifluous tones, hasn't he?
He certainly does, doesn't he? Thanks to you. Now, next week, we are going to have an interview. We're going to be chatting again to Lord Kevin Brennan, an actual to goodness Lord on the podcast. He is a Labour member of the House of Lords in the UK, and he's going to be chatting about something that we all know that you out there in Listerland are extremely passionate about. And it's the UK government's fan-led review of live and electronic music. There's been a huge survey with 4,000 fans responding. There's been roundtables across the country. There's going to be a creation of a fans charter. And this is all about ticketing. It's all about local grassroots venues and what the government and business can do to help maintain all those things. So we'll talk to him next week about exactly what's going to happen and what the government and business should do next. Stu, that's it from us for this week. Thank you very much for listening out there. If you are enjoying the show, please do spread the word. And if you hit like and subscribe or leave a review or add some star ratings wherever you're listening to us, that really does help spread the word as well. So please take the time to do that if you can. You can support us as well via Patreon. You can sign up to become a super fan, which also gets you access to our weekly lock-in. So you can get 20 minutes of extra blah blah from me and Stu after the show ends each week. You can get access to that by going to patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. Of course, we always want to hear from you as well. If you'd like to get in touch with us about anything we've discussed today, any other recent stories or any questions for us about how the music business works behind the scenes, we really do want to hear from you. You can drop us a line at thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. That's thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. I've been Joe Sparrow. He's been Stuart Dredge. And until next week, see you soon.
Goodbye.